I've been sitting with stories for this channel for a long time now, and honestly, there are some accounts that I find myself wanting to skip. Not because they aren't important, but because they're uncomfortable. There's this one question I'd honestly rather avoid, and it's whether someone who is doing everything right can be completely falling apart in secret. We like our near-death stories to be about grand accidents or sudden illnesses, something that happens to a person. But when a story comes in about addiction, especially from someone like Nicole, who is 28 and just trying to get through her degree, it hits a different nerve. I'm Elsie, by the way. I've spent years listening to people describe the moment their lives stopped, and I've realized that the stories I'm the most reluctant to hear are usually the ones that have the most to teach me. Nicole sent this in just a few days ago, and it's been weighing on me. It's about the double life she was leading at her desk, and the 17 minutes where her heart just stopped. It's not a clean story. It's messy and it's raw, and I think it might be the thing someone out there is waiting to hear. The first thing I remember is the taste. It was like I'd been chewing on a handful of old pennies and bleach. My throat was so raw I couldn't even groan. I tried to lift my hand to touch my neck, but it felt like my arm was made of lead, just dead weight on the scratchy hospital sheet. I could hear this rhythm, this whoosh-click, whoosh-click, and I realized it was a machine doing the breathing for me. I'm Nicole. I'm 28, and if you'd seen me a week ago, you would have thought I was the most boring person in the world. I was just another student buried in textbooks. But waking up in that ICU, it was Wednesday? Or Tuesday? I remember looking at the clock on the wall, one of those big white ones with the red second hand that just jerks along. I tried to count the clicks. 1, 2, 3. Everything was so bright it made my head throb, but I couldn't close my eyes because I was terrified that if I did, I'd go back to the library. Not the real library on campus. The other one. Wait, I should back up. I'm still a little fuzzy. The doctors say that's normal when your heart stops for that long. 17 minutes. I keep saying that number to myself, but it doesn't feel real. It feels like I was gone for years. Let's go back to last Friday, June 26th. I was at my apartment, sitting on that white shag rug in the living room. I have this low wooden coffee table that I use as a desk because my actual desk is just piled with papers I don't want to look at. I was wearing this brown long-sleeved shirt. It's my comfort shirt, the one I wear when I'm about to pull an all-nighter. I had my hair pulled back in a messy knot, and I was staring at this spreadsheet in my textbook. You have to understand the pressure. I was so tired. Not just I need a nap tired. It was like my bones were heavy. I felt like a computer that had been running for 3 weeks straight with 100 tabs open in the background. My mind was it was looping. I'd read the same line in the textbook over and over, something about market analytics or data sets. The tiny little grids on the page started to blur together until they looked like a gray fence I couldn't climb over. And that was the problem. The grids weren't just on the page. They were in my life. On the outside, I was Nicole, the grad student. I had the grades. I had the internship lined up. I was the girl who always had her stuff together. But behind that, I had these other tabs open. It started in my undergrad years, just a little something to help me focus. Then a little something to help me sleep, because I couldn't turn my brain off. It's a secret that eats you from the inside out. It makes you a liar. You lie to your professors, you lie to your parents when they call, you lie to your roommates. I'd be sitting there at that coffee table looking at my laptop, but my brain was actually scrolling through how many pills I had left. It becomes an addiction to the silence. I just wanted the noise to stop. That Friday night, the volume in my head was so loud I couldn't breathe. I was panicking about a deadline and the spreadsheet was mocking me. I just wanted to sleep for an hour. Just 1 hour of actual peace. I took the sleeping pills. Not all of them. I wasn't trying to end it. I just wanted to mute the world. I remember thinking, if I can just reboot, I'll be fine. I leaned my head down on the textbook. The paper was cool against my forehead. I remember the smell of the graphite from my pencil. It's strange, the things you notice when you're dying. I saw a little fray in the shag rug, just a single white thread sticking up. I watched it for a second, and then the screen just went black. No, are you sure you want to shut down message? Just black. I keep thinking about that detail, the single white thread Nicole was looking at. I've heard a few people describe something like that, where the last thing they see isn't a loved one or a beautiful sunset, but just some small, tiny object. A cup of tea, a crack in the ceiling, a thread on a rug. It's like the brain zooms in on one ordinary thing because it can't handle the fact that everything else is stopping. But what's really sticking with me is how she talked about the tabs open in her head. I've gotten a handful of stories from people in high-pressure jobs, doctors, coders, students, and they all use that kind of language. They describe their own minds as being corrupted or overloaded. It makes me wonder if the way we live now, this constant need to be on and productive, is actually creating a specific kind of spiritual crisis. I've heard this before, this idea of leading a double life just to keep up with the spreadsheet. I'm genuinely curious. Does that high-pressure world make it harder for someone to ask for help? Because the secret becomes part of the system they're running. I'd really like to know if anyone else felt like they had to keep their addiction hidden just because they were too successful to have a problem. It's the kind of thing that makes me rethink how we see people who seem to have it all together. When the blackness hit, it wasn't like falling asleep. It was more like the power went out in a whole city. One second there's light and noise, and the next there's just this heavy, thick silence. I didn't have a body anymore. I wasn't Nicole the student. I was a thought in a dark room. But I wasn't afraid. That was the weirdest part. I should have been terrified, right? My heart had stopped. My roommate was going to find me slumped over a textbook in my brown shirt, and it was going to be this huge, awful thing. But in that moment, I just felt light. The tabs were finally closed. All that noise about deadlines and internships and the pills I was hiding, it just evaporated. I remember thinking, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. I don't know how long I was in that dark space. Time didn't work the same way. It wasn't like the red hand on the hospital clock. It was more like being underwater where the current is just holding you still. And then I started to hear it. It wasn't a voice, not at first. It was the sound of a library. You know that specific sound? It's not totally silent. There's the sound of pages turning, the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of someone's pen scratching on paper. It was the most peaceful thing I've ever heard. I started to see things, but not with my eyes. I was seeing memories, but they weren't my memories. It was like I was looking at the source code of my life. I saw all the times I'd taken a second look at something I shouldn't have. I saw the exact moment in my dorm room 3 years ago when I decided that I could handle the addiction on my own. It wasn't a judgment. It was just facts, like looking at a spreadsheet that was finally balanced. Then the light started to come in. It wasn't like a sun. It was more like someone was slowly turning up the brightness on a monitor. It was soft and white, and it felt like it was soaking into me. That's when I saw the angel. I didn't see wings or a halo or anything like that. It was just a person made of light, but the presence was so heavy. Not heavy like my lead arms in the hospital, but heavy like truth. Like you couldn't tell a lie if you wanted to. I tried to say something. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to say, I'm sorry I messed up. I'm sorry I couldn't handle the pressure. The angel didn't move, but I felt this thought enter my mind. It was so clear. You aren't broken, Nicole. You've just been using the wrong weapons. I remember wanting to argue. What do you mean? I've tried everything. I've tried willpower. I've tried scheduling my life. I've tried to be better. And the angel they showed me. It was like they pulled up a screen in front of my mind. It looked like a university study hall, but it went on forever. There were millions of desks, and at every desk, there was a person. And I could see their tabs. I could see everyone else's secrets. I realized I wasn't the only one leading a double life. The battle isn't about trying harder. The angel's thought came again. It's about understanding the mechanics. You've been trying to fix a corrupted file by hitting the computer. I'm going to show you how to overwrite the code. I was so confused. I'm a marketing student, not a coder. But as I stood there in that infinite library, I realized that my addiction to the lust and the pills, the things that were destroying me, they followed a pattern, a sequence. And for the first time in 28 years, I wasn't just Nicole who was failing. I was a student who was finally being given the right textbook. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to tell you about the 17 minutes. Because while I was in that library, my roommate Sarah was in the living room. She'd come home from her shift at the coffee shop and found me. She told me later that she thought I'd just fallen asleep, but then she saw the bottle. She said my face was the color of the shag rug, grayish white. I can almost see her now, frantically calling 911 while I was standing in front of an angel learning about spiritual weapons. It's so strange to think that my body was being shocked and pumped with adrenaline while I was feeling the most peaceful I'd ever felt. I was 28. I was dying. And for the first time, I was actually listening. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that while my body was on that white shag rug, I was essentially in the largest archive in existence. I mentioned the library before, but I need you to see it. It didn't have walls. It was just rows and rows of those long, dark wood tables, exactly like the ones in the graduate wing on campus. But they stretched out until they turned into a blur of light. The angel, the one who told me I was using the wrong weapons, walked over to one of the tables. They didn't have a book. Instead, they waved a hand, and this map appeared in the air. It looked like a 3D model of a brain, but it was lit up with these glowing pathways. It looked like a subway map or a circuit board. Look at the traffic, the angel thought. I leaned in. I saw these little pulses of light moving along a specific route. They were fast. They were aggressive. That's your addiction, Nicole, the angel said. That's the pathway you've worn into your mind over the last 3 years. Every time you felt the pressure, every time you reached for the pills or let your mind wander into places that fed your lust, you were just strengthening that road. I felt this wave of embarrassment. Even though I was dead, or mostly dead, I still felt like a student being caught with the wrong browser tabs open during a lecture. I looked at the glowing red path on the map. It was so wide and deep compared to the others. I tried to stop, I said. I felt like I was whispering, even though I didn't have a voice. I prayed. I promised I'd never do it again. I made schedules. I set timers on my phone to keep me away from things. The angel didn't look disappointed. That was the strangest part. Usually, when I failed, I felt this heavy cloud of guilt. But here, the air was just clean. You were trying to block the road with a paper fence, the angel told me. Willpower is a finite resource, Nicole. You only have so much of it before the battery runs out. But I'm going to give you something else. 7 weapons. 7 keyboard shortcuts, if you want to think of it that way, to overwrite the corrupted code. Suddenly, the hospital room flashed back in. It was just for a second. I felt a sharp, hot jolt in the center of my chest. It was like someone had dropped a heavy weight on me. I heard a voice yell, "Clear," and my whole vision wobbled. The library flickered like a monitor that was about to lose its signal. I saw the green linoleum floor of the ER and a pair of blue scrubs. And then, zip. I was back in the silence. Back in the library. The angel was still there. They hadn't moved. "We don't have much time," they said. "The first weapon is about the second look." I thought about all those nights at my desk. I'd be working on a project, and I'd see something. An ad, a picture, a thought. Something that triggered that itch in my brain. Temptation doesn't start with the first look, the angel explained, pointing to the glowing brain map. The first look is just your eyes working. You're human, you notice things. But the second look, that's where you start to write the code. That's where the choice happens. I saw a memory play out on the desk. It was me, 3 months ago, in the campus computer lab. I saw myself look at a screen, then look away, and then I saw my own hand move the mouse to click back. The moment you realize you're about to take that second look, the angel said, you have to immediately redirect. Not in 10 seconds, not in 5, immediately. You say, "Jesus, I surrender this moment to you," and you physically look at something else. "But I've tried that," I argued. I look away, and the thought just follows me. The angel nodded. Because you were trying to do it alone, this prayer isn't a reminder. It's an activation. It's like hitting a kill switch on a process that's trying to crash your system. It invokes a presence that you don't have on your own. I watched the map again. As the angel spoke, I saw a new pathway light up. It was thin, like a tiny white thread, but it cut right across the red highway of my addiction. This is the Matthew 5:28 weapon, the angel continued. It's about the heart, but you have to be fast. No negotiation, no just one more minute. You hit the switch the second the prompt appears. I'm sitting here thinking about that library. It's interesting, isn't it? I've heard hundreds of stories, and usually when people see a vision like this, they're in a garden or a cathedral. But Nicole is a student. Her whole life right now is defined by study halls and textbooks and trying to learn things. It makes sense that her experience would look like this, an infinite library. But the thing that's really getting me, I'm trying to process how clinical the angel is being. It's not a sermon about being a bad person. It's a lesson about mechanics. I think this is where the story turns, honestly. It stops being about the tragedy of what happened at that coffee table and starts being a manual. I've heard a few accounts where the person is given very specific, almost technical instructions, but I've never heard someone call them keyboard shortcuts. That's a new one for me. It's almost like the vision is meeting her exactly where she lives, in a world of logic and systems. I keep wondering if we all get the version of the truth we're most likely to actually use. The angel moved to the second point on the map. The second weapon, they said, is about identity. You've been treating your body like a machine you can just overclock until it breaks. You think it belongs to you, to do with as you please, to feed it pills when it's tired, to feed it lust when it's lonely. I looked down at where my hands should have been. I remembered the feeling of my heart giving out. I remembered the brown shirt and the shag rug. Your body is a temple, the angel said. It's the dwelling place of the Spirit. It's not your playground, and it's not your prison. It's a holy space. The second weapon is to place your hand over your heart, right where it's failing right now, and say, Holy Spirit, this body is your temple. I belong to Jesus, not to my desires. I felt a ghost of a sensation in my chest. Not the jolt from the hospital, but a warmth. Why the physical gesture, I asked. Isn't it just about what I think? No, the angel replied. Lust is a whole body experience. It's chemical. It's physical. When you touch your own heart while speaking the truth, you're engaging your senses. You're interrupting the pattern. You're reminding your nerves who they actually answer to. I saw a vision of a man, I don't know who he was, and he was doing exactly that. He was in a room staring at a screen, and he looked like he was about to break. But then he put his hand over his chest and whispered something. On the map, I saw the red traffic just stall. It didn't disappear, but it stopped moving. It creates a roadblock, the angel said. Then they showed me the third map. This one was about the surge. Nicole, you cannot empty your mind by force, the angel told me. The mind doesn't work that way. If I tell you not to think about a blue car, what do you think about? A blue car, I said. Exactly. Most people fight temptation by staring at it and yelling no. But that just keeps the focus on the temptation. You have to replace the file. You need a playlist. The angel waved their hand again. I saw a list of things. Not music, but memories. A time I'd felt really proud of my work. A verse my grandmother used to say. The feeling of the sun on my face during a hike last summer. This is your Philippians 4:8 playlist, the angel said. You have to prepare it before the battle. Things that are true, noble, right, and pure. And when the temptation hits and you've redirected your eyes, you immediately start playing this list in your head. For how long? I asked. 90 seconds, the angel said. I was confused. 90 seconds? That's it? Neuroscience, the angel thought, and I swear I felt a hint of a smile. I designed the brain, Nicole. I know how it works. A surge of temptation is a chemical reaction. It has a life cycle. It lasts about 90 seconds. If you can successfully redirect your thoughts for that long, if you can stay on your playlist, the surge will dissipate. But if you give in for even 10 seconds, the surge gets reinforced. It gets stronger next time. I looked at the map. I saw a pulse of red light start to grow like a wave. But then, as the white playlist thoughts started to fire, the wave just flattened. It didn't crash. It just lost its energy. It was like watching a loading bar that never quite reached 100%. I sat there in that infinite library, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like a victim of my own brain. I felt like I was being given the admin password. I was being shown how to manage the system. But then, the library started to shake. The rows of tables began to dim. The bright monitor light of the angel's presence was flickering again. I felt a cold, sharp tube being shoved down my throat. I felt hands pressing on my ribs. I'm not ready. I wanted to scream. I only have 3 weapons. You said there were 7. The angel looked at me. Their eyes weren't like human eyes. They were like looking into a clear, deep pool of water. Hurry, the angel said. Listen to the rest. The library was vibrating now, like a train was passing right underneath the floor. The long wood tables were starting to blur at the edges, and I could hear that whoosh-click of the ventilator getting louder, trying to pull me back to the hospital. But the angel's hand was steady on the map. The 4th weapon, the angel said, their thought voice cutting through the noise. It's about how you store the information. You've been reading the word like you're cramming for a midterm, Nicole. You're looking for data points, but you aren't hiding it in your heart. The angel showed me a file structure on the glowing brain map. Most of the scriptures I'd memorized were in a folder called temporary files. They were there, but they weren't integrated. They hadn't become part of the OS. To hide the word, the angel said, you have to record these weapons. Use your own voice. Listen to them every morning for 21 days. Why 21? Because that's how long it takes for the neural pathways to actually set. You're recoding your background processes so that when the temptation hits, the truth is already the default response. You won't have to search for the file. It will already be running. I thought about my phone, sitting back on that wooden coffee table next to my laptop. I'd used it for everything. Scrolling through things I shouldn't, checking grades, hiding my secrets. The idea of using it as a weapon felt like reclaiming a stolen tool. The 5th weapon is the exit, the angel continued. The map shifted, and suddenly I was looking at a 3D model of my own apartment. I saw the shag rug, the low table, the flickering lamp. I saw myself sitting there in that brown shirt. But this time, I saw things I'd never noticed. I saw a door marked exit over the hallway. I saw another one over my phone. Most people wait for the temptation to disappear, the angel told me. But God doesn't promise it will disappear. He promises a way out. In every single moment of pressure, there is a literal door you can walk through, a phone call you can make, a room you can leave, a screen you can close. The 5th prayer is to ask Jesus, show me the exit door right now. And then, this is the part you miss. You have to actually walk through it. Immediately, I whispered. I was starting to see the pattern. Immediately, the angel confirmed. No negotiation. Don't stand in front of the door and debate whether you should open it. Just move your feet. The library shook again, harder this time. A row of books on a distant shelf fell over, but they didn't make a sound. They just dissolved into white light. The 6th weapon is the sequence, the angel said, and their presence seemed to grow taller, more intense. James 4:7. Most people try to resist the devil first. They grit their teeth and try to be strong. But the sequence is, submit first, resist second. The angel showed me a vision of myself trying to fight a wave of lust. I was gritting my teeth, my whole body tense. On the map, the red traffic was just pushing right through my defenses. Now watch, the angel said. The vision changed. I saw myself lift one hand, just slightly, a physical act of surrender. I said, God, I submit this moment to you. I can't win this alone. The second I did that, the map changed. A white light surrounded my figure, and the red traffic hit it and just evaporated. Only then did the vision, Nicole, say, Devil, I resist you in the name of Jesus. Submission is the power source for resistance, the angel told me. Without it, you're just a machine trying to run without being plugged in. Raise your hand, Nicole. Even if it's just an inch, make the physical act of surrender. It activates the authority. Wait, I need to stop here for a second, because that part about the 90 seconds, the life cycle of a temptation, that's really sticking with me. I've read a lot of these accounts, and they usually stay in the realm of the spiritual or the emotional. But Nicole is describing something that sounds like a technical manual for the human brain. It makes me wonder, I'm genuinely curious about this, if that 90-second surge is a universal thing. I've heard from a few people who struggled with different things, not just addiction, but anger or fear, and they all talk about this wave that hits them. If there's a literal chemical timer on how long a temptation lasts, it changes how I hear the whole story. It makes it feel less like a failure of character and more like a tactical error. I'm sitting here wondering if that 90-second rule holds up for everyone, or if it's something Nicole's mind landed on because of her background in data and marketing. I'd honestly love to hear from someone who does completely different work, maybe a nurse or a counselor, to see if they've noticed that same expiration date on an impulse. It's a detail that feels so specific, like a piece of code that was finally explained to her. I could feel my heart now, not the peaceful heart in the library, but the one in the ICU. It was thudding, a ragged, uneven beat. Thump, thump, pause, thump. It felt like someone was banging on a drum inside my chest. The seventh weapon, the angel said, and their voice was the only thing keeping me from slipping back into the pain. It's proactive mind renewal. Romans 12:2. You've been trying to fix the caterpillar, Nicole, but I'm turning you into a different creature. Metamorphosis. You don't just wait for the storm to hit. Every morning, you mentally rehearse the victory. You visualize the desk. You visualize the textbook. You see the trigger, and you see yourself using the weapons before the temptation even arrives. The angel took a step toward me. The light from their face was so intense it should have blinded me, but it just felt warm, like the sun on a cold day. The battle against the secret life is won in the morning, the angel said. It's won in the preparation. You are being transformed into someone who thinks differently about their body, their mind, and their God. You aren't Nicole the addict anymore. You are Nicole the temple. The library was dissolving now. The long wood tables were turning into mist. I could see the monitors in the hospital room through the haze. I saw a nurse with tired eyes checking a bag of fluids. I saw my roommate Sarah sitting in a plastic chair in the corner, her head in her hands. Wait, I said, reaching out. What if I fail? What if I get back to that desk and I forget everything? The angel didn't move, but I felt this surge of it wasn't a feeling. It was a fact. It was a certainty. Failure is not falling down. The angel's thought came to me. Failure is staying down. Every time you use a weapon, you're building a new road. Every time you submit, you're accessing my strength. Consistency, Nicole. Not perfection. Just stay in the system. And then the angel did something I'll never forget. They pointed to the map of my brain one last time. The red highway was still there, but it looked dim, like a road that hadn't been used in a long time. Over the top of it, a new network of white light was glowing, strong and bright. Go back, the angel said, and show them how to rewrite the code. Suddenly, the silence of the library was ripped away. It was replaced by the most violent, screaming noise. Alarms, voices, the sound of metal clattering on the floor. The taste of the old pennies and bleach came back 10 times stronger. I felt my ribs crack as someone pressed down on my chest again. 1, 2, 3. I've got a rhythm, someone yelled. I tried to open my eyes. The light in the ICU wasn't soft like the library. It was harsh and blue-white, and it hurt. I tried to lift my hand, the gesture the angel showed me, but I couldn't move. I was just a weight on a bed. But inside my head, I could still see the map. I could still see the exit doors. I remember the first thought I had when my heart started beating on its own again. It wasn't about the pain, it wasn't about the fear. It was 90 seconds. I just have to make it through the first 90 seconds. I watched the red second hand on the white wall clock click forward. 1, 2, 3. I was 28. I had been dead for 17 minutes. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had the admin password to my own soul. They took the tube out of my throat on Monday. That was 4 days ago. I remember the feeling of that first breath on my own. It was cold and it tasted like hospital air, but it was the best thing I'd ever felt. I just sat there, shaking, while Sarah held my hand. I hadn't told her everything yet. I hadn't told her about the library or the map of my brain. I just told her I was sorry. I got home on Wednesday. It's Friday now. Exactly 1 week since my heart stopped. I'm sitting at the same wooden coffee table right now. I'm wearing the same brown shirt. I had to wash it twice to get the hospital smell out of it, but I needed to wear it today. I needed to face this spot. My phone is sitting right where I left it. The hospital ID bracelet is on the nightstand in the other room, but I can still feel where the plastic was rubbing against my wrist. I'm still physically weak. My ribs hurt every time I take a deep breath because of the CPR. The doctor said I shouldn't be back at my desk yet, that I need to rest, but I had to see if it was still there. The textbook is open to the same page. Those tiny grids, the market analytics data, it's all still there. And for a second when I looked at it, I felt that old tabs open feeling. I felt the surge. It was like a red pulse in the back of my mind. That itch to just escape, to go back to the pills, back to the secret thoughts, back to the quiet. I looked at the clock on my laptop, 8:14 p.m. I didn't wait. I didn't negotiate. I looked away from the screen immediately. I looked at the white shag rug. I found that same little white thread I'd seen right before everything went black. I placed my hand over my heart, right over the spot where they'd pressed down to bring me back, and I whispered it. Holy Spirit, this body is your temple. I belong to Jesus, not to my desires. I felt the red surge hit me. It was strong. It felt like a physical weight behind my eyes. I started my playlist. I didn't think about my grades. I didn't think about my internship. I thought about the library. I thought about the sun on that hike last summer. I thought about the way the angel looked at me, like I was a student who finally understood the lesson. I watched the seconds tick by on my laptop. 30 seconds. The weight was still there. 60 seconds. My heart started to slow down. The panic began to thin out. 90 seconds. And then it just stopped. The surge didn't win. It didn't crash the system. It just dissipated exactly like the angel said it would. I sat there on the rug, my hand still over my heart, and I realized that the admin password actually works. I'm not fixed. I know that. I still have the addiction to deal with. I still have to call a counselor on Monday. I still have to tell my parents the truth when they visit tomorrow. The road I wore into my brain for 3 years is still there. But I'm not using a paper fence anymore. I looked down at the pencil I was holding last Friday. It was still lying on the table, right next to a smudge of graphite. I picked it up. My hand was shaking a little, but I didn't drop it. I'm 28. I died for 17 minutes, and I'm finally learning how to study for the only test that actually matters. I'm still sitting here, looking at that little white thread on the rug. That image of Nicole sitting there with the stopwatch on her laptop, it's gonna stay with me. It's so different from the usual, and then I was healed ending we expect. She's still shaky, she's still in the middle of it, but she's using the language she has. She's using that admin password to get through the first 90 seconds of being back in her own life. What I'm left sitting with is how much the background of a person seems to shape the way they receive these instructions. Nicole is a student, so she saw a library and a map. She reached for words like keyboard shortcuts and corrupted files because those were the only words she had that were strong enough to hold what she went through. I keep wondering, if someone from a totally different world, someone who's never touched a spreadsheet or a laptop, went through the exact same thing, would they see the same mechanics? Or would the truth show up in a completely different language? I genuinely don't know. Nicole's story adds one more piece to the collection I'm gathering here, but it leaves me with a question I can't answer yet. I'm really curious about that 90-second rule. If that's a literal law of the mind, I want to know if it feels the same for a carpenter or a nurse or a pilot. If something like what Nicole described has happened to you, if you were given a manual or a set of mechanics that saved you, and your life looks nothing like hers, I'd really like to hear it. It's the kind of thing that helps me understand whether what I'm noticing here is true for everyone or just the version of the truth we're able to hear. So please tell me in the comments. It honestly helps me think. I'm still wondering about that little white thread on the rug.